If you're feeling funky, then this might be the rum for you. This week, let me tell you about the Killowen Funky Cuts rum in collaboration with the Brewery Corner. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and like I said, this is the Funky Cuts dark rum from Killowen. So let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you a little bit more about it and why I, a whiskey nerd, am reviewing a rum. Well, this, like I said, is a collaboration between Killowen and the Brewery Corner, and my pal Chris Hennessy actually manages the Brewery Corner, and he sent this bottle to me to try out in a few different cocktails and to get a taste of what they're up to, because Chris isn't just a guy who manages a bar, he is a flair bartender. He's actually a very, very good mixologist, but he also, I think, was one of the first big names in flair bartending here in Ireland. He is involved in a few different projects, but the one we're talking about today is this one right here, the Funky Cuts dark rum. Like I said, this was a collaboration with Killowen. I've talked about Killowen loads on the channel, but this is a kind of an attempt to recreate some of those old styles of rum that were prevalent in Ireland in around the 1500s. But before I talk about the history of the rum, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different to my normal reviews, because I'm also going to make a little cocktail, because Chris Hennessy, like I said, he is a fantastic bartender, and this rum is meant to be very good in a cocktail. Obviously you can use any kind of rum in a cocktail, but this really does stand up firm. So my go-to cocktail is always going to be a simple, straightforward daiquiri with 2 parts rum, 1 part sugar syrup, and 1 part lime juice. I've already measured out my lime juice and my sugar syrup, so I'm going to pop them in there, and then I'm going to go in with my rum. This is coming in at 68.35% alcohol, so I'm not going to go in with a huge amount. I'm just going to go in with 1 ounce of my rum, and I went in with half an ounce each of that sugar syrup and that lime juice. Just like that. Simple as. I'm going to give that a quick little stir. I'm going to set it aside and let it cool down properly so I can talk to you a little bit more about the rest of the history and the inspiration behind this rum. Like I said, Chris is a bartender by kind of trade, but he's also a very good historian. He's researched loads of history. He's behind the brand Aquavitae, which is kind of like the water of life, and he's researched loads of basically alcohol history in Ireland, and this is one of these old styles of rum. It's kind of like the rum that be coming off the trade ships coming into Ireland in the 1500s, and it's made of 100% molasses. It was actually wild fermented, so with wild yeast, and it was double distilled. Well, technically 2.5 times distilled, because they had a what's called a thumper keg. Not getting into the science of distilling, but it was essentially 2.5 times distilled to get a lot of those funky flavors while also getting up that nice strong ABV like it would have been back in the day. This project here started about 3 years ago when Chris and Brendan Carty, the distiller up at Killowen, worked to kind of create this style of rum, and it's a little bit different to what Killowen was doing up to that point. So in order to capture that kind of Jamaican style of rum, they distilled it a little bit differently. So normally when you distill, you've got your heads, your hearts, and your tails. So in your heads, some of the volatile components are there that don't actually taste nice or can be dangerous in high quantities. Your hearts are essentially the best part for making alcohol, for making kind of distilled spirits. And then your tails, again, stuff that doesn't really taste nice, it has a lower amount of alcohol in it, so it's generally discarded. But when you're making kind of Jamaican style rum, a lot of those tropical fruit flavors, the esters, are in the heads, so they are that kind of slightly more volatile component. So when they distilled it, they obviously got rid of the dangerous stuff in the heads, but they took a nice deep cut into the heads and their hearts in order to get all those tropical flavors into the final finished product. It was then aged for 2 years and 2 months in an ex-Appleton estate rum barrel. So this is essentially rum that's been aged in an ex-rum barrel, doubling down on that flavor you get from the spirit. And I think that's enough talking about the spirit. I think it's time we get in for the nose. Cheers. Okay, it is immediately sugary and sweet and a little bit funky, like that kind of earthy note. Like I was saying, that they took that cut into the heads to get all those kind of tropical flavors, and I think that's brought with a bit of kind of funky notes that come through in it. It's got this kind of like buttery brown sugar kind of note and nose, but also some like bright pineapples and syrupy kind of mango in there. You can definitely tell that it is high ABV, like 68.35 is really high. I can definitely tell there's a lot of alcohol there, but it's not it's not sharp, it's not burning my nose out. It is as far as 68.35% can be. It's really well, I think, incorporated in with all those flavors. It's not just high alcohol metallic kind of notes, it's quite actually fruity and funky. There's actually a lot of like kind of creamy vanilla notes coming through as well. I mean a rum barrel originally starts life usually as a bourbon barrel, so the barrel that was used for this would have been used at least 2 times beforehand, so like a lot of that sharp oaky flavor would have been taken out by the bourbon and by the rum, and it would have been left with that kind of like the vanilla kind of notes you get from the barrel, and I think that's come through here into the final spirit. So I think I'm going to go in now for the palate and see what it is. Cheers. It is hot, it is sweet, it is tingly, it is funky. Like there's definitely a hit of alcohol there. You can feel that warmth spreading through. But I think that the kind of the creamy notes that I was getting on the nose, that kind of the funky, earthy flavor has come through. Kind of gives it like a wrapper, so it's not overly strong, it's not overly sharp. I've definitely got that alcohol tingle on my tongue, but there's also like kind of overripe banana, a little bit of like that mango again from the nose. I wouldn't say it's like that bright pineapple flavor again coming through. It's more like a citrus, like a blood orange, that kind of like almost tangy kind of citrus coming through, rather than that bright kind of pineapple note I was getting up front on the nose. Yeah, with that earthy, funky, sugary note is here. Like it's almost like an earthy sugar, like sugar cane or the molasses. Like it's not like that the brown sugar I was getting in the nose. It's more like that earthy, funky, kind of deep character into the palate here. And I can already feel that there's a nice kind of long finish on this. So I'm going to go in again, final sip, and talk about the finish a bit. Yeah, so on the finish, you get this really nice kind of tingle as it goes down your throat. You get the kind of those spreading warmth on your tongue. You have this kind of lingering, again, a lingering tingle on your tongue with that alcohol there, but really earthy, loads of that creamy vanilla still there, little bit of that like overripe banana I was getting, again, that kind of like just like that almost like custardy, creamy kind of character here on my cheeks as I'm going here. It's nice, bit of the oak coming through, not that much though, just like a little bit of that, but again, more that earthy, dark kind of flavor coming through into the rum. And now I think this has been chilling long enough. Gonna go in for a sip of the cocktail. Cheers. That's lovely. See, a daiquiri is always my like go-to rum cocktail. Like for me, with a whiskey, it's whiskey sour, old-fashioned, something simple where you can taste the character of the spirit you're using. With a daiquiri, it's just lime juice, sugar syrup, and that spirit you're using. So it really does let the spirit kind of shine, or if it's going to be overpowered by sugar and lime, it's not really a strong spirit. Here though, that spirit is forward. That spirit is, it is coming through with that kind of the funky, earthy note coming through, but it's a lot more character. It's still like as sweet as you'd expect something like a Bacardi or like those kind of mass-produced rums where they're made for that broader consumption. It's still got that kind of sweet base to it, but then on the back end, that kind of funky character comes through with a bit more flavor and a bit more kind of interest than just like a simple rum that's essentially just adding alcohol to a cocktail. This has a lot of character and it does come through really, really well. It is freezing in Ireland right now, so if you want to see me make a hot cocktail, I'll be making a hot buttered rum with this rum, so check back on Friday to see that. And one thing I just remembered as I looked at the bottle when I looked at this, a small amount of the proceeds, if you are to buy a bottle of this rum, some of the money goes to the Windrush Justice Foundation. So some of the money does go to help charity, because rum production has a very long kind of bad history, a very dark history, connections to the slavery trade. You might have seen the news recently where plantation rum renamed to Planta-Ray to kind of get away from that history. And while I don't think a small distillery in the north of Ireland was connected to the slave trade, I think it's a good idea that they are, contributing here. They're recognizing the legacy that rum production has, so a small amount of money from this does go to charity. But as for me, I've got 2 glasses of very tasty rum in front of me, so I know I'm going to enjoy these. I put out whiskey reviews, mostly whiskey reviews, on Wednesdays. I put out cocktail recipes, again, mostly whiskey cocktails, on Fridays. So if you want to see more, make sure you hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.